I'll give you guys a little COVID update on what's going on. Follow along with me. This is a great website, worldodometers.info. 1.1 plus million people died of this catastrophic man-made virus that slipped from a Wuhan laboratory. They still don't tell you it's man-made. I don't know why. 44 million people were infected. How many of those people dealt with serious things that are still alive, that their lungs are rotted out, they can't even barely breathe? We don't know. But the big trouble is right here. This massive spike as they try to reopen, and as it continues to crawl through the world, and the weather gets cooler, people spend more time indoors, they're exhausted, the economy's exhausted from it. The United States not faring too well. Almost 1,000 people dead just today. 70,000 cases just today out here, and the chart doesn't look that good either on this front, right? It's another spike in daily new cases, reaching the peak of new cases, almost 70,000 people, but almost 100,000 people a day, probably going to be there by November on 100,000 people a day. No one's locking down, and I don't want to lock down. I'm tired of that shit. There's no money to lock down. This economy can't handle a lockdown. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? The deaths are on the low because we're able to control, there's better treatment and things like that. They found out some things. So that's good. And most of the susceptible people that were really, in danger of death from this virus got it in the first round for the most part. They're the ones that have perished from the scourge. So what does that come down to? Well, that comes down to a big trouble. When is this thing going to go away, if ever? How long are you immune? 4 months or forever? I hear 4 months. It's a very, very troubling thing. Another lockdown could be quite possible if it gets completely out of control, or we could just burn through it and just get it out of here. We don't really know what the outcome of it is. We're likely going to see some dark days ahead, unfortunately. But, in the news, here's something that's interesting. Melania Trump focuses on COVID and slams Democrats for politicizing the pandemic. Well, they have a right to politicize the pandemic, but they have never stated a single thing that they would have done different or better, other than telling people wearing masks or something like that, which they were ignoring the whole thing. They would have botched it just as bad as Trump, and they would have did probably more damage because they're incompetent. They are incompetent, that's for sure. So the big picture in the COVID realm is that it's a man-made virus that's destroying the economy, destroying lives, destroying our very futures. A lockdown in the future might be possible, but I doubt it. But if it doesn't come, it's going to be mayhem. Different states doing different things. The only hope that we have is that the virus can burn through on this second round, and it'll be over with, and we get some sort of a vaccine that someone somewhere will take, and in 2021 we could say goodbye to the COVID. What will be the day that the last case is announced and there's no more cases for a week or 2 weeks? When will that happen, and how will that happen? How will we turn that corner? I don't know, but my personal opinion, it's not particularly fair to blame Republicans or blame Trump for this virus. It's in every country. There's not much you could do to avoid it other than super hard lockdowns. And the only thing he really fucked up on is wearing masks. He was a real asshole when it came to that. And a lot of Americans were sitting there, well, wearing a mask. Why should I do it? Why should I this? Why should I that? It was the only thing that could have slowed the virus down and avoided the first shutdown. And we could have avoided this whole thing and kept it the numbers low on the outside so we could still eat at restaurants. But that was a pipe dream. I was doing my best to make that clear, and it is what it is. So that's where you're at with this COVID deal here at Trax News. You could DM, you could message, or email us with whatever stories you'd like to see. We're building this news organization, and the shares are out there. We're going to be working on that. More on that later.